Alright, in this video we'll be discussing about the HTML form. Now, what is HTML form? An HTML form is used to collect user input. The user input is the most often sent to the server for processing. Now, a form is not a new word to you. You know what a form is. So just like the way someone gives you form to fill in HTML or in programming, you also have form with which a user you collect user information and to do whatever you want to do with. Like your Facebook, before you log into Facebook or you register Facebook, you have to submit your information. So these are prepared with HTML form. So the form is responsible for this. So in this video, we'll see how we can utilize this form to collect information, to collect user information, and how we can explore more attributes or more information about this form beyond just collecting forms. Now, an example is here. We have first name John. This is first name. Then we have the input field. Then we have the last name. We have the input field, and we have the submit button. So, okay, let's start with the form element itself because this part is very broad. Now, the HTML form element is used to create an HTML form for user input. For example, the form element. Remember what we say an element is. Now, form is an element itself. I'm just going to go to VS Code and clear everything we have done and leave the template. Now, form. Enter. Now, you see what happened. I just typed the form element and enter, and this is what it's even showing me action. But ignore the action. You have nothing to do with the action now. The action is majorly for back-end engineers. The action yet is for majorly for back-end engineers. So let's go back to our this thing. Now, the form element is a container. Remember, by now container is not a new word to you. Now, it's a container for different types of input elements, such as text field, checkboxes, radio buttons, submit buttons, etc. All the different form elements, okay, are covered in the HTML form element. Now, the input element. Let's start with the input element. The input element is the most used form element. Reason being that whatever data you want to collect, you must use an input. There must be an input with which the user submits those data you want to collect. Now, an input element can be displayed in many ways depending on the type attribute. Now, attribute again. We'll be dealing with attributes in this course more frequently. Now, in HTML, form also has its own attributes. There are ones that it comes with by default. It has its attribute, its information, additional information. Now we have the input element. Now, to start with, it has various types. We have the text. For example, maybe you want to collect the name of a user. What you do is you change the type to text. When you want to collect anything in Word, you change it to type. They say displays a single line text input field. Now, when it is radio means giving two options to select one. You are giving someone two options to select one. Now, when you use the attribute type radio, the browser understands. We'll explore it with time. Now, the checkbox is when you want to select multiple choices. Maybe you want to select multiple choices, you use the checkbox. Now, when you want to submit, you want the user to submit the form, you use the submit type. Now, when you want, there's another type, button, like when you want to click button. Now, all the different input types are covered in this chapter, so we'll take them one after the other. Now, the text field to start with. The input type text field defines a single line input for text input. Now, a form with input field for text, for example, this is just an example. So, label is down, but let me just explain it here. I'm going to copy this thing here and I'll paste it on my VS Code so that I'll use it to explain it to you. Now, this is my, okay, I'm going to clean this one and I'm going to paste. Now I save. if you notice in this form form element, we have the label element, we have the input element, we have the label element, and we still have the input element. Now what this label element does is that it tells the user the kind of information you need him or her to fill in that input element. For example, let me go back to this the first one, the first form. Now when you look at this example, now we have first name. Now when I want to fill this form, I know that in this input field I am filling my first name. I will fill it. Now we have last name. This last name now is the label. I'm labeling the input, the name I'm giving it, I'm labeling it. Now I need your first name in this first input, and I need your last name in the second input. When you are done, I need you to submit. So this is what happened here. Now the label element, it is just used to specify. And okay, now let's just write it manually without copying. So I'm going to do form first. Now this is form element. Now inside the form element, I want to use the label. Now when I type label and I press enter, now it gives me 4. This is by default, this is how it comes with. Now with this 4, now what it means is that okay, let me type input so that you see input. Now the input, now you see it comes different kind of input. We have the button, we have the checkbox, we have the color, we have the date, we have the date time, we have the deadline, we have email, depending the type of input you want. Now I'm looking for text, and now this is text. Now when I click on text, do you see by default what it comes with? Now it comes with the type text, which is what I selected. Now the name, what name do I want to give it? Now the ID, by default it comes with an attribute ID, but you are the one to give it the name of the ID. Now to make it very easier for you whenever you are working with form element, the label and name. Now for this four now, whatever you give for, give it to the name. The 4 and the name, the browser recognizes that when you give the 4, like this one, you see 4 first name, name still first name, you can still give the ID first name in order for you to be consistent with what you are doing. Like the second one now, label last name, which is last name, 4 again for last name, and the name last name. So this is just additional information it comes with. It helps, this is just the browser understand what you are doing. So you give it a name. This 4, if you are using 4, if you want to give it a 4, that means there must be a name attribute. But in a situation whereby you don't want the 4, you remove the 4. If you remove it, you also remove the name. You don't need the name again. You don't need it. So this is just how to play around with these things. So this form you are seeing now here, this one I just highlighted. This is just the output here. This is the output, first name, last name, and all that. Now for example, I'm going to now do different type. I'm going to leave all. By the way, the BR element, what the BR element does is that when you want it to start when you want space, let me view it on my browser so that you see. I'm going to view on my browser so that you see. My browser is starting. So now, can you see? Okay, let me go and clean the last thing I did. This one is reflecting there, so let me just clean it. Okay, I have cleaned it. See, now back to my browser. Can you see how neatly arranged this thing is? Now let me copy this last name and the input and put behind so that you see the difference. Now I'm going to copy the last name and the input. I'll copy and I'll paste it under. Enter. I'll paste. Now when I save, I'm going to remove the BR element so that you understand what I mean. Then I have saved. Now I'm going back to my browser. Can you see how it looks like? So now what the BR element does, when you attach BR element push it to the next line to make it look very fine. But when I remove the BR element, everything will be on a straight line. So that's what the BR element does. So let me just check time in 9 minutes. Okay, I'm going to stop this video here, and in the next video I'm going to take each of